men have made their way to the manger. They're not quite in the manger yet, but they're getting there. I said to the 8 o'clock congregation earlier, Richard, I shared with them a conversation you and I had about moving the Epiphany backwards as it is, moving it before the date it actually occurs. The Epiphany actually doesn't occur until the 6th, which is Wednesday, so we're celebrating it a little early, which usually they tell you not to move the feast that way. If there's a feast day that falls in the middle of the week, in seminary we learned that you should move it the other way. But the problem with moving it the other way is if we moved it the other way, we would have lost the baptism of our Lord. And somehow, in talking, Richard and I felt like we really kind of needed to hold on to the baptism of our Lord. So we decided to move Epiphany backwards so that we could all celebrate with the wise men their arrival in Bethlehem. You know, this is a story that we all are kind of attached to. We like this story. But if you read the story, as we just did this morning, there's very little details, aren't there? We've sort of made up that there's 3 wise men, but the text doesn't say that there's 3 wise men, does it? It just tells us there were wise men. It really doesn't tell us that they came from the east either, but we've sort of read into the text that they came from the east. We've read into the text that they were probably astronomers because they were able to read the night skies and to follow the star. We also, somewhere in Shakespearean times, came up with names for the wise men. Who can tell me what the names of the wise men are? Gaspar, Balthazar, Melchior. Yes, that's the one they couldn't think of at the 8 o'clock. We decided that that was their names. It's really, we have no reason to say that that's their names. We just sort of thought we needed to name them. We keep trying to fill in the details of a story that has very, very little details. Now, why do you think we want to fill in all the details? Why is it important to us to fill in the details?
We're not good at not having details.
Give me all the facts, please.
Yep.
I want things in a nice, neat packet so that I can understand. Yes, yes. Why else do you think we want to fill in all the details?
Make it believable.
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
Story more real.
Makes the story more real. Kurt, you said it makes it more believable. Yes. Yes. Why else do you think that we want to fill in all of the facts? Or fill in our own facts into the story? It's more exciting. We like our story better.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it lends itself better to storytelling as well.
It does. It does. And somehow, if we sort of fill in our story, fill in our facts, then we're part of the story. And we're part of not only telling the story, but part of living the story. And this is an important story for us to live, isn't it? So we came on Christmas Eve to peek into the manger, but really all of us are led Sunday after Sunday, year after year, to come and find the baby Jesus, just like the wise men. In point of fact, we could put ourselves in the story as the wise people, men and women. That might be the place we attach to the story. Or it may be that when we hear the story this year, we attach to the story with all of those people around Jerusalem who were fearful when they heard that the Messiah had arrived. How do you think you would respond if someone credible came to you and said, Nikki, somewhere over there in the east, Jesus is really here on earth? What would your first reaction be? You wouldn't believe me? You wouldn't believe me? What would your reaction be?
You'd have to Google it.
You'd have to Google it to see if it were true. And if you found that it was true, how do you think you would react? You would go visit. You would run and you'd be one of the wise men. You would go visit. I told the people at 8 o'clock that I think my first reaction might be along with the people in Jerusalem, a reaction of fear and uncertainty. What could this possibly mean? This truth that has been born amongst us. What does it mean in my life? What changes is it going to bring? Am I really prepared? Have I been doing the things that I was supposed to do to be ready for the Messiah to be here and now? I think I might be a little scared. Then I think I might want to run and see what this was. Now we're told that the wise men come bearing gifts. What are the gifts that they bring? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, what have we all decided over all time that those gifts mean, and what are they for? What's a baby going to do with frankincense and myrrh?
Well, one of them is supposed to foresee death.
The frankincense and the myrrh, absolutely, yes. The frankincense and the myrrh are the foreshadowing of Jesus' death. Yes. They are also, as we learn both in the book that we talked about at the 8 o'clock, both in the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, they are the gifts that the people would have brought to God. So the wise men are proclaiming that this truly is God amongst us. People from far to the east, people not in the midst of things, have understood who this child is, that it is God incarnate, and they are saying, we're bringing these gifts to God. We have read into the story the belief that the gold was for the flight into Egypt, for Mary and Joseph to use it for the flight into Egypt. But again, the story doesn't tell us that, does it? That's just something we read into it. Because we want to understand what the gifts are and how those gifts will be used by the Christ child, not only in our lives, but in the lives of the world. So, the question for us as we are led by the star is, what gifts would we bring? What are the gifts that we would bring to this child this year as we encounter the Messiah in our midst? So the questions, the two questions, and I'll repeat them when we do announcements. The two questions, I guess there's really three questions for you, for your yellow cards, are: number one, what leads you to want to encounter Christ? What draws you? What's pulling you to want to encounter Christ? And what draws you to want to encounter Christ in this community? And number three, what gifts do you bring as you encounter Christ this year?